I certainly continue to believe that the cost of housing in this community is one of our more acute problems, and has far-reaching consequences, and that if we actually were able to make progress on it, it would have kind of benefits that would build on each other. One of the, kind of take in pieces, I kind of think of there as being sort of different things that can be done. One of them is student housing. I will say I have been involved in some preliminary meetings with, it's no secret, Champlain College has purchased a couple sites in town. They would like to develop those sites into student housing. One is at the Eagles Club, one is at the former Ethan Allen Club. Mm-hmm. And what I think is interesting about that is there is a chance, particularly, there's a chance, depending on how those developments evolve, where you more or less could house 100% of Champlain's students in student housing if in Burlington, if those were to go through. So I'm generally supportive of that, and we've started working with them to see there will be a need for some city support for that to go through. Those are still at relatively preliminary stages. I think what that, the way that feeds into this larger conversation with UVM, which is the more acute issue. I'm encouraged that UVM is, they have been, since during the campaign, going through a process of doing a housing needs analysis, and I'm eager, that report's due out soon, and I'm looking forward to, I'm encouraged by the way that they've been talking about housing. I think they see a real, I think we'll see. My sense is they are open to the idea that they should be trying to push up the percentage of students that they're housing in student housing ones.
I think that's right, and I do want to talk a little more about UVM, but before getting that, to stick with housing, and this ordinance that's in process right now on residential occupancy limits for unrelated adults, extending that to high density areas. Now, you said that you're sympathetic to the residents' perspective, and you linked the problem to high rents and the general housing shortage. That's been sort of your analysis of it. But the public reaction that we saw has been very mixed. All right? And one of the things that's been said is the landlord saying the existing laws are not being enforced. So, first question, are they? That's a pretty big charge.
So, I remember Gene Richards saying that, and, Gene, I think there's an interesting question as to whether you need a change. I think what Gene is referring to, well, there are some people who, and actually I'm not certain Gene is referring to this. I guess, let me say this. I don't think I appreciate Gene and respect Gene's perspective. I don't think what is driving our housing affordability issue is lax enforcement over our existing regulations. I do think our regulations matter, and this is sort of, sometimes I kind of take a circuitous path here, but I mean, one area of housing was around the student housing. I gave you a long answer to that.
Right.
I do think the way city governs, the regulatory land use regulatory regime that the city has a large impact on the cost of housing. I think the biggest, most significant opportunity for that to change is through this Plan BTV effort. What I think that has the opportunity of doing is, cut me off if you don't want to hear this, but I think we don't have what the Plan BTV has the possibility of doing relatively quickly this summer into the fall is coming to a consensus about what we want our community to look like. There are all sorts of developable parcels. There are parcels in Burlington that are either parking lots or underutilized structures. The Rite Aid is one I often point to, where you sort of have a single-story suburban structure surrounded by a parking lot. There are areas like that throughout the city, and this has been studied by the Planning and Zoning Office, and it comes out to about 40% of the downtown where you could have more development on that. It would be totally consistent with the character of Burlington that we know and love today. And I think the Plan BTV process could, because it is a visual process, one with talented designers involved using modern technologies, we could come into a meaningful consensus about where we want to go. And then we could link that to our zoning ordinance in a way that allows for predictability and certainty that people want to build something that we have this consensus around. They will be able to do it relatively quickly. That's not what we have today. Today, as I've experienced firsthand, you have a system where basically any project of any size is subject to great unpredictability and uncertainty. And I think in the end, that is a major driver of the housing costs.
Right, but just sticking with the ordinance.
Back to
the ordinance, okay, so, on the enforcement, I hear what your answer to that is, but the other side of the equation has been, at least some members of council saying, they're worried that the change, on the other side, could hurt low-income residents who live in,
I'm worried about that too.
And you share that concern.
I do, and that's why, I am not locked into any one position on this. I want to see how it comes through the committee. I think that's a reasonable position, given that, we're just, what has been proposed so far, needs to be fleshed out in a number of ways.
So based on what you've heard so far, you're not ready to really take a position on the limit?
Two things. I'm not ready to sign off on a bill until I actually see what that bill is, and we don't fully have that now. But moreover,
well, we kind of know. I mean, it's really an extension of an existing policy to new areas, right? It's not something different. It's really just adding more neighborhoods to the same policy. So I guess, what is it that you think you're going to find out?
I think, Greg, the details matter for one thing, but for a second thing, that may be more meaningful, because I think you're right. I think we have a pretty good sense of where this is going to come out. But there have been legal questions, legal challenges raised, potential legal challenges raised to this one that were not fought through previously, and I'd like to understand a little bit further about where that comes out before totally weighing in. But more broadly, I am hesitant to do something that I think the net effect will be to reduce the number of housing opportunities. In some sense, I think you will limit the number of people, you will reduce the number of people that will be living in that part of town, very likely, if this goes through. I'm concerned about doing that in the absence of any other changes, like the one I was just talking about, that make it, create a possibility of adding capacity somewhere else. And I said that to people, the Hungerford Terrace people who I think have been brave and persistent and courageous about advocating their point of view. I said basically exactly that to them during the campaign, and I still feel that there needs, if we're going to make this change here, I think there needs to be changes elsewhere in the system. And this Plan BTV one is a hot issue. I think this is going to be a major issue in the fall.